Hello again, it's Bob Pulver from Elevate Your AIQ. In this episode, I chat with Hernan Chiosso about the intersection of AI and HR, emphasizing the potential for AI to enhance HR functions, the importance of human skills, and the need to rethink job roles. Hernan and I discuss AI's impact on internships, art, and education, advocating for a human-centric approach and responsible AI use. The conversation also highlights the importance of trust, critical thinking, and the ethical use of AI. As you'll hear in each episode, I ask all my esteemed guests what they recommend to elevate one's AIQ, and Hernan is not only running workshops on AI literacy and skills development, but is also heeding his own advice, so stick around for that. I hope you enjoy my discussion with Hernan, and thank you again for tuning in. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Elevate Your AIQ. I am your host, Bob Pulver. With me today is Hernan Chiosso. Hernan and I met through one of the AI communities for talent leaders, but we've also crossed paths through other means like For Humanity and some other efforts around this evolving AI space. So, Hernan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. We've been talking about this for a while, and it's great to finally do it.
Yeah, for sure. So, Hernan, maybe you could just introduce yourself, tell people what you're doing these days, and a little bit about your background.
I am originally from Argentina. As you can see from my shirt, we're very proud of our national soccer team. This is an older shirt. It should have another star added as the latest World Cup. I am originally developer and designer, and I gradually moved on into HR by means of first manage projects, then manage teams, then manage practice, and as a team, as the offshore team that I was managing was kept growing, I was asked to step into the role of VP of Global Talent, but I never lost the connection to the technical side of things. And then during the pandemic, I started to think, is this what I want to keep doing? Part of the HR stuff had become administrative in nature, and it's extremely important, but it's not where my passion is. So I decided to get back more to my roots, where I could be more like learning new things, trying new things, experimenting. And that's how I became a consultant in the HR and technology space, combining a little bit of HR, technology, product management, agility, and now since the eruption of ChatGPT, a lot of AI and how AI can augment the work of HR and how it's going to change the landscape of the workplace.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't know if people use the term T-shaped anymore. I know some folks have trying to come up with other letters of the shape of individuals, but I do appreciate people who have taken I call it a sort of lattice approach versus a ladder approach to your career. But it sounds like you're constantly sort of curious about technology and how things work, which I think is really good attribute to have in the days of AI, because you can use it in so many different ways. Whether you're trying to, I don't want to confuse AI with automation, but certainly that's how a lot of people are thinking about it. Can it automate some of the things that we used to do from a process standpoint and things like that? And I think that's a small part of it, but really not all that AI is capable of. When we think about what artificial intelligence is really intended to do, we defined it that way because it's doing higher order things. It's acting more like a human in some ways, in terms of the way it tries. Well, it doesn't really think, but the way it attempts to gain an understanding of language and can listen, and it can speak, and it can takes on some of the human senses and things like that. And I just think the use cases for some of those things are incredible. And the HR space, there's so much potential to go past all of that sort of back office managing workflows and processes and things like that, to really enabling both HR professionals as well as the rest of the people in other roles across the organization. And I think it seems like HR has a renewed sort of mission to make sure that they're really elevating everyone's potential and making sure that they're given these AI powered tools to obviously use in a responsible way. But there's just so much incredible opportunity. So, Hernan, one of the things that caught my attention, like right after we met, was some of the things that you were talking about in this People GPT Slack channel. Which there were two things. One was pointed us to your Substack, where you've been writing about some of the experimentation that you've been doing, which I found really valuable. And then I know you've been running some workshops. I thought maybe you could just share a little bit about both of those, the impetus for both of those, and what some of the feedback you've been getting.
Sure. Very recently, I had a sort of a workshop in as part of a talent acquisition summit event that I was presenting at, and the idea was to try to measure the temperature of interest of talent acquisition community, in particular regarding AI. And one of the most interesting things that I found is that it's all over the place. There's people who have been experimenting and playing with things and building things as within their organizations. There's people who have don't are not really sure how to spell GPT. So they have been hearing about this thing. They have been seeing that this is coming, and they read some articles about this being an up and coming thing, but they don't really know how that applies to their job, and they don't really feel empowered. They feel more afraid of the technology than empowered by the technology. So part of the what I tried to do with a workshop was that to empower people with technology so that it felt, yes, this is something that not only I could be doing, but I should be doing, because that's a benefit for my organization and for my career as an HR professional, to be on top of things of technology for once. And I think that each one of these new waves of technologies, they present an opportunity to leapfrog over all the things that we had pending to study, to learn, to work on, because something like this, like the advent of artificial intelligence in its many different shapes and forms, literally it just jumps over everything else that there was a trend 5 years ago. And so now you were thinking of, okay, how can I build the best tool for this or that function? And now the reality is that I don't need to build any tools. It's all in there. One quick example on how AI and ChatGPT in particular can eliminate the reason of existence of some tools. Right? I wanted to share in one of the slides at the presentation. I wanted to share a QR code for a survey that I wanted to give to the audience. And my first instinct was to go and see, okay, what are some tools that allow me to create a few free QR code. And so I went into Google and searched for something, and I started to see all these kind of like shady tools that are free, but they steal your information and things like that. And then I said, wait, maybe I should ask ChatGPT. And I asked ChatGPT, can you create a QR code if I give you a URL? Yes, sure. Okay, here's a URL. Okay, here's a QR code. Boom. And that AI has that possibility that when you figure out the capabilities, it can really render a lot of the tools that you use and a lot of the processes that you use just meaningless and pointless. I think one of the key things that I see about AI creating value for all of us as professionals, and in particular in HR, is the opportunity to revisit some of the things that we are doing to see if this really still makes sense, or are we just going through the motions on something. I also always use the example of resumes, right? So right now you have candidates using AI to embellish and improve the resumes, and you have companies using AI to read the resumes and figure out which candidate is best. At some point, you have AI trying to trick AI, right? And so when you get to that point, you should start to think, okay, is there any sense to this at all? Like what's a point in having this fight between AIs? right? So, and even when we know that resumes are an arbitrary proxy for the value of a candidate to begin with, right? At some point in the many decades ago, it was agreed that a resume was the best way to show the potential value of a candidate. It's not, but we agreed that for the sake of convenience, this is a good proxy. And now, when it's AI on both ends of the equation, we maybe need to think, do they have any value at all in the process? So I think that opportunity of revisiting what makes sense and what doesn't is it's something that we should take out of this fight to implement AI.
I feel like everyone is so enamored with, especially the generative AI and just the ability to spit out human sounding text, as well as people sort of conflating AI with automation. Because to your point, like, automation's been around. I mean, technically, versions of AI have been around for quite a while as well, in terms of predictive AI and operational AI, as opposed to generative AI, generating new information. But I just feel like people are grasping at whatever they can to sort of validate the need for this investment in AI, but they haven't even scratched the surface of where the real value is. And you're right. I mean, spoke to another guest about this sort of resume, AI versus AI. That whole resume thing is, I think, is not a good. You're right. It's not a good proxy for what this person behind the resume is even capable of. So I do think that that part needs to change. But the other thing I was thinking about is this, like, almost maniacal focus on productivity as a measure of whether or not we should deploy this kind of technology or not, and or a measure of, look at how much better work is because we're so much more productive. I mean, to me, it seems like there's a point of diminishing returns with that kind of approach. And also, if you're just looking for, if we just continue to focus on efficiency and productivity, we're just kind of playing into this model that says, humans, we'll just replace humans wherever we possibly can. And that's not a good place for humans to be, because then you're just going to keep doing more. You can call it whatever you want, AI, cognitive automation, intelligent automation. You just keep doing that, then you're just going to keep moving humans out of the workforce. They're going to keep getting displaced, as opposed to thinking about it as AI augmenting what humans are capable of, and finding the right balance between human and AI to make better quality decisions, starting with who you hire, all the way through other more strategic decision making. Can it help bring more data to the people who need it at the point of need, and long term make increasingly more data driven, fact based and intelligent decisions, where any individual or even team of individuals just didn't have the capacity to manage all of it.
Yeah, that AI offers opportunities when it comes to doing the things that we do more efficiently. On the other hand, it also allows us to do things that we couldn't do before. For example, with the case of employee development, somebody asked me not so long ago, which case of AI are you most focused on, or do you feel is more critical? And I said employee development, because the reality is that we need employees to make that change. If we need the talent, we're going to need our team to adjust to the new need, to the new requirements of the role. And also, we have a sort of a responsibility of saying, okay, how can we make sure that our employees remain employable, right? Alluding to what you were saying about how is this going to impact the future of work and the available jobs for people. Now, I do think that at some point, we humans need to revisit our relationship with work.
Visionary voices, bold breakthroughs. This is Shalley's Alley, where top recruiting minds spill their best kept secrets live every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Raw, unfiltered conversations on sourcing, hiring, and the future of talent, where we ask the tough questions no one else will. Tune in and level up.
And to understand why we work on what we work, why we work the amount of time that we work. I think part of that discussion is already happening with the push towards remote work, the push towards a 4-day week. And it's about achieving some balance and understanding that yes, work is important. Yes, it's a way that we can grow ourselves professional. We can contribute to society and be rewarded in exchange for that. But it's not all we do. I mean, and there's a lot of jobs out there that are not properly rewarded, that are extremely vital to the to our society. And there are some other jobs who are maybe completely accessory, that are highly compensated. There's a book that I read earlier this year that I've been recommending to people a lot, and it's by an anthropologist called. His name was David Graeber, and the name of the book is BS Jobs.
Heard of that? I've heard of that book. Yeah.
The interesting perspective that this book presents is that realization that there's some jobs that exist not because they are productive and create value, but because they are, in some cases, they add to the status of somebody else. One example that the author uses is receptionist in an office that has almost no visitors and almost no phone calls. But you need to have a receptionist. You need to have somebody there in case somebody comes, because otherwise you look like a shady company, or like no one is paying attention. And so you have a receptionist, and then you have to fill up the job description of that person to do all sort of random things so that this person is occupied. So now you're not focused on the productivity of the person, but how can you justify that job as a job to have, right? And so I think that's a discussion that we need to have. Which are the jobs that create value? In the same author looks at how some job positions are highly compensated, and maybe some positions in finance. And I'm not picking on finance for the sake of picking on finance, right? But let's say a portfolio manager, that maybe their focus is on, yes, optimizing the investment of an account, but on a downturn of the economy, you are basically paying that person to lose the least amount of money possible, right? In some points of the economy, you're basically paying that person to create the least possible negative value. And we have other positions like teachers, nurses, whose contribution is always positive, and they are always creating positive value, and they are not necessarily highly compensated in many job markets. I mean, depending on the location, but in many job markets, teachers don't make a lot of money, especially if they cannot find a full-time job, and they have a few hours here and there. But you really need teachers, you really need nurses. And so if you look at that way, it's kind of unfair that some other jobs are way more valued by the economy than others. So I think AI will force us to make other decisions, hopefully better, regarding who gets what value and how valuable that work is for our society.
One of your Substack posts, your ProductizeHR blog, you talked about just because you can automate things, or just because you can use AI in certain situations, doesn't mean that you should. And I think this ties into some of what you're talking about. First of all, we should not assume we know what someone else's job entails, right? Like, how do you make sure that you're really looking at each of these scenarios, with a critical eye, and not just assuming that just because something can be automated that it necessarily should. But you're right in terms of the receptionist and in talent acquisition. I mean, I think about the recruitment coordinator. Maybe they spend a good percentage of their time, like more than 50% of their time, just going back and forth trying to schedule interviews. That's a use case that's generally been solved. There's a lot of interview scheduling, software. There's conversational AI that's integrated into it. But what else can that person do? I mean, you weren't born and raised and went to school and did training and maybe even higher education to just be a go-between, between a candidate and a hiring manager, or a candidate and a hiring team. There's plenty of other things that this person is capable of doing. And so I think it kind of gets into the responsibility, it seems, of organizations to, in parallel to exploring these, automation and AI, scenarios, also think about the investment that's needed in the human workers, not just the digital workers, assessing what else these folks are capable of. How do you maybe redesign roles that so that you give them a role that didn't exist a few years ago, or assess their ability to pivot into a different role altogether based on their ability to reskill and learn something new. So I just think, I guess I put that responsible AI, of course, and human centric AI perspective on to say these are human beings who, as you pointed out, people get meaning and satisfaction from helping others and from feeling useful contributors to whatever it is that they're working on. So we need to play into that and increase engagement by giving them things that they can really embrace. And I think a lot of times people just haven't been assessed or shown what else they're even capable of.
I think that this requires to understand which situations need you to focus on output versus on outcome. I have a couple of examples that I can share to illustrate this. One is more related to HR, and is the concept of, I do a lot of mentoring of like recent graduates or people about to graduate, and they're very worried, and with good reason, that they are not finding the amount of internships that used to be available. So, and it's becoming a very hard labor to try to find that internship opportunity that allows you to gain the experience that you need to be able to join the market. Now, I think AI probably has an impact on this, in the sense that many companies that used to think of internships as cheap labor, they feel like, well, doing this with AI is even cheaper. I mean, even AI has been, ChatGPT has been described as a very eager intern that really wants to work for you, right? So, and if you say, like, if you think of the output, you say, well, maybe I don't need an intern because the AI, ChatGPT can do it for me. But if you think of the outcome that I need is that seasoned professional that I'm going to be hiring a few years from now. And if that seasoned professional didn't even get the opportunity to start through an internship, how they are going to become a seasoned professional? The other example that I used to illustrate this focus on output versus focus on outcome is, and then I'm going on like on a tangent on this, is a case of generating art with AI. In particular, I love to play music, and love to record music. I used to have some bands with some friends long time ago, but I've been having this conversation with some of my friends. Some of them are musicians, and they are focused on, look how fast I can create this song. I can use Suno or Udio or anything like that and create a song in 10 minutes. The point of creating some art and music in particular is not measured in songs per minute.
The BARF, breaking news, acquisitions, research, funding. It's the week that was. It's a wonderful way to catch up on the week that was the week prior, kind of a John Oliver-esque type of show. Ryan and I pitch each other's stories. We laugh. It's fun. You can watch it on YouTube, but you can also subscribe to the podcast. Give it a listen. Give it a look. Thanks. What I love about the Workforce Agility Limited series by Cornerstone was we talked to executives and customers all about skills. Cornerstone has a wonderful background in learning and development, training, etc. Their LMS is world class, but they've centered the business now, not just on that, like building upon that, but building upon how everything has moved to the skills economy. So check out the limited series called Workforce Agility, and you can get it wherever you get your podcast. And it's just a wonderful series where we talk to their executives on the shift of why, and also their customers that are using it. So check it out whenever you get a chance. Appreciate it.
It's not about how many songs you can create. It's about the transformative process that happens in the artist when they create music. So if you are just not doing that and you're outsourcing that to AI, you're missing a very important half of the process. Yeah, you got a song that you can share with somebody, and somebody maybe they will get fascinated with that music. They may enjoy it. They may dance to it. They may reflect on the lyrics that were generated by AI. But you, as a musician, as an artist, you're not getting anything in that bargain. You're not getting the transformation that happens after you write a song. You don't get that same sense of ownership and that same sense of parenthood that you get with your own art. So that's an example of, if you focus on output, on how many songs per minute, you're missing the outcome that is the transformational process of art. We make art not just to create art. We make art. Some artists said that humans are born with a series of wounds that we need to heal, and that's why we do art. And one of the biggest wounds that we humans are is that we are mortal. We're not gonna be here forever, and that's one of the ultimate sources of artistic inspiration. We do art to try to find meaning in life, and if you outsource that process to AI, you're missing your part. You're missing the value that you are getting, that outcome that you should be getting. So what's the point?
You're sort of cheating yourself, right? Because you've basically skipped over the part that gives you a sense of accomplishment, where you get to sort of express your creativity, your individuality. Because I was thinking about, as you were talking, I was thinking about, a lot of not just organizations, but a lot of schools. Not only do they not have any like AI, curriculum beyond their, just whatever they do in computer science, but just this like do your own work kind of policy, right? And through their school managed, devices and Google Classroom or whatever, they just don't. I guess they'll know if you're using something like a generative AI solution on your device, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't use it in education. It just means they shouldn't use it to get the answer, right? It should be part of learning. It should be in a tutoring kind of capacity, in a coaching capacity, and not just say, oh, here's my, feed it, here's today's math homework, right? And then just, I guess this in part goes back to, me getting on my responsible AI kind of soapbox, but it's irresponsible to create generative AI solution that basically allows you to cheat. But if it's in a coaching sense, I mean, even Khan Academy and some of these big learning platforms, they've incorporated generative AI, but they specifically avoid any you know even the appearance of cheating. Like they literally don't give you the answer. It absorbs the way the student is trying to express that they've absorbed the knowledge that was being taught, and sort of personalize the guidance based on how it thinks you're approaching problem. What is your technique, what's your thought process, kind of thing, which is exactly what a good teacher or coach or even mentor would do. So I think those are the right approaches. I mean, it's a tool or a set of tools, right? And so how you use AI makes all the difference, and how you build it can make all the difference for the people who are trying to learn it.
Yeah, and I think we need to find a healthy balance between the situations in which we are using AI and situations where we need to go old school. AI should be used because it's going to be part of the world in which our children are going to grow into, and that's part of the skills that they will need to have. But at the same time, they need to be able to develop the underlying human skills that are necessary for them to even evaluate whether the AI generated content is accurate at all. I've been following a lot the work of Ethan Mollick, and I'm sure you probably have followed him too. And he's been having a lot of conversation. He's a big advocate of using AI in education and not trying to use an AI detector to prevent kids from cheating. Because first of all, kids will need to learn about AI, and second, these detectors are not necessarily accurate. And what happens? How do you resolve the cases where somebody, maybe because English is their second language and not their first language, is tagged as, oh, this is AI generated, and it's not. So that's something that needs to that you need to figure out how to involve AI, and maybe part of it is kind of like reversing the roles, in that instead of asking somebody to write an essay, you ask them to write that or an initial draft of an essay without using AI, then have them use AI to augment that essay, and then without using AI, use their human knowledge to audit the content generated. So it's like you need to play a different game. I going back to the art analogy. In the late 19th century, photography became way more popular, and many of the artists that were naturally focused on creating portraits. So a lot of the work of painters was portraits for those who could afford it, and for the religious topics for the church, and things like that. But when photography became more massively adopted, and people started to use photography for the portraits.
Hey, we're the payroll baddies, and our mission is to make payroll fun and relatable.
And call out industry when we hear it.
You gotta call it out. You gotta call it like you see it. But we also gotta shine a light on all those unsung payroll heroes out there, making sure we get paid.
Yeah, those are the real payroll baddies out there, and we love sharing their stories and showing them love.
With gold chain and everything, baby.
By the way, SAP is the best payroll out there, and if you don't like it,
get out.
Some artists rebelled against that and said, this is not a game that we want to play. I cannot play a game of being more realistic than a photography. So now I'm going to play a different game. And that's where Impressionism and Surrealism and all those isms started, is because artists decided this is not the game that I was playing is no longer valid. I need to play a different game. I'm going to create new rules so that it's a game that I can play and succeed at. Otherwise, there's no point in painting. There's no point in visual arts in general. So I think we need to do the same thing with AI to understand which is the game that makes sense to play now.
I think that's also a lesson in sort of your adaptability. Are you going to just sort of give up on everything that you've found, meaningful? Are you going to sort of reevaluate, your, value that you create in whatever it is that you do? Or, yeah, I mean, are there skills that you can learn? Can you incorporate, whatever you love and find meaning in with your work combined with some of the new, technology? I think that's where I think people need to reevaluate. I guess I feel like for the people who are not necessarily just, the doomsdayers that say AI is coming for my job and I just can't do anything else, so I'll just wait for, universal basic income to kick in or something, or, I'm gonna go and embrace this maybe even more than I should, even if it means giving up, some of what I find, meaning in, just because, it just will hopefully make life easier. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of middle ground for people to understand, like we were talking about before, to find the specific use cases of where it makes sense to use it, and don't overuse it, don't abuse it, but and don't cause harm to others. I guess it goes back to what Professor Malik was saying around, don't even try to use the detectors or whatever. And that's come up before. I've talked to talent assessment providers before who said the same thing. Like, the detectors don't work accurately, especially like you said, if it's like, English is not your native language, and you're much more sort of precise about the words that you pick. And so the detectors are faulty. You're not gonna, there's always going to be people who try to skirt and cheat the system. So how do you like redesign some of these assessments so that you get the outcome that you want without, that type of manipulation? But I think underneath all of that is trust, right? We have to trust that most people will do the right thing. We have to trust that most people will use these in a fair and transparent way. Not everyone will do that, but we have to trust that most people will, if they know as part of their sort of upskilling of how to work with AI, will know how to use it properly and not shortchange themselves and their own development, but also not cause a negative impact to others, which gets back to the responsible AI piece.
I think that this involves some education on these topics. They don't necessarily realize that the environmental cost of using AI, for example, and that the fact that you having all these data centers with machines that are ingesting data has an environmental impact, or the fact that generating AI content based on human generated content can be detrimental to those humans, because and this is something that even Google is being faced with when we have to buy the bullet and start to generate AI summaries of our searches, even if that goes against our business of advertising and things like that, because otherwise we're gonna be rendered obsolete. But if you are just reading those summaries Perplexity gives you on the content that it found, you may never go to the sources. You may never go to the website where that information was published. You may not be generating the value. Like this person wrote the blog post to showcase their professional knowledge, maybe to get some advertising revenue because of traffic. And now all of a sudden it's gone because all you're ever going to be looking at is a summary that was generated by Gemini or by Perplexity. So that is also an impact, like a side effect of using AI. And so people need to be educated about that, and at least know that this happens, and then they can consciously choose that yes, this is a way in which I want to operate or not.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a while for people to think more deeply about that, and not everyone will, right? Not There are going to be some people that just, I guess that's the answer, right? I guess I was wrong, or without thinking critically that about how these things work. I mean, I've said for a long time that the average person doesn't need to know how LLMs work, and eventually prompting will be easier. It's certainly not a long career if you've tried to get into prompt engineering, but it is important to know how to have a conversation with it such that what to say or how to say it to get the results that you want. And if you put those same prompts into different generative AI tools, you might get at least slightly different answers. So, but I just think it's important for everyone to just start, getting used to it, start engaging with it, and but don't lose your your human skills of critical thinking and questioning things that I think a lot of people these days are doing. I mean, it's like the news.
I get it. The podcast just isn't enough. That's all right. Head over to your favorite social app, search up Work Defined, WRK Defined, and connect with us.
Whatever news you listen to, there's probably a very small percentage of the population that listens to sort of nonpartisan kind of everyone's like on one team or the other, and there's not necessarily a ton or enough in the middle ground where you're listening to both sides and drawing your own conclusions and that. But I think there's a lot more to come. I mean, we're still very early days. I just think it's more important to sort of accelerate people's experimentation, at least with some of these tools, and start to get comfortable with it, so what it's good at and where its shortcomings are, but also recognizing that it's going to get smarter.
Yeah. I think how you use a tool is key, and you need to ultimately make sure that the tool fits within your process and fits within your rhythm and your pace of doing things, and not that you are just playing to becoming an accessory to the tool. Like, you're not the human accessory of your AI tool. It should be the other way around. It should be about augmenting your capabilities and augmenting what you can do. My advice to everybody is to start playing with it to figure out where it fits for you, because I could tell you how it works for me, but may not be the same for you. But I think that is a very interesting approach, and I also would love to see the opposite approach. Maybe I can create a mind map and have that become prompt, right? It should be easily doable, because that could give you more tools as you are prompting to have control over what you are asking of the AI. But it is something that, for me, who I'm a very visual person, it helps. It helps a lot. But maybe somebody else doesn't care. Maybe somebody else cares more about the voice and the conversational AI, and how in the OpenAI recent demo, the voices of the AI generated agents were all engaging and excited and seemingly emotional, right? So it depends on how it works for you.
Yeah. No, I'm a visual person as well, but I also have I've got my notes and ideas on a lot of different places, right? I've got them in Evernote, I've got them in Apple, Notes app. I've got, a stack of Post-its, all kinds of tools. I would love to just scan all that and then have an AI start to, piece it together in a logical, visual fashion. So Hernan, one of the questions that I ask each of my guests is around, this, as the podcast title implies, like your AIQ. And so when you think about, that acronym and the need for everyone to sort of elevate their AIQ, because AI is everywhere and doesn't matter what your job is, there's always some aspect of it that could be enhanced, or that may be disrupted in some fashion by AI. When you think of that acronym AIQ, what do you think about in terms of how people need to think about increasing their AIQ?
I think that of course there's a component of, like, technical knowledge, of getting familiar with the tools, getting familiar with the way that the tools work. There's a there's another component. It has to do with understanding how it fits within the business, and within the process. And there's a component about related to understanding what's the trade-off in social impact, like we discussed. What's a trade-off in personal value that you're getting out of it? What's the environmental trade-off? So I think that those are very important parts of the journey of getting to know AI in a responsible way, in a way that it's not just about what it can do for me as an individual right now, but also for me long term and for society long term.
Yeah, those are the things that we thought of when we not designed it, but just conceptualized, what it means, because it's certainly much more than just learning how to prompt any particular tool, right? There's a mindset part of it. There's the responsibility kind of part of it. To your point, it could be everything from environmental impact to just fairness of your future colleagues, and making sure they're not judged unfairly, and making sure the technology is, if you're building it rather than just using it, that you think about these things by design, which I'm sure appreciate being a product guy. So no, this was great, Ernan. I'm so glad we got to spend some time talking through this in more detail, and I think you've got a lot of important insight that our audience get value from. So I really, really appreciate your time, and I'll make sure to include some of these tools in the show notes. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure to have a conversation, and I'm very passionate about these things. My mom was a teacher. I grew up with that, and we grew up with that value of sharing things to others, sharing knowledge to others. Knowledge is one of those things that you can share where it becomes a multiplier. When you're sharing other things, you have a piece of cake you're sharing with somebody, you have less cake for yourself. But when you share knowledge, everybody gets their share and more, and it augments over time. So this is something that I'm very passionate about.
All right. Thank you again, Hernan.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.